Hello, and thanks for joining us from our studios in Israel. Coming up in today's newscast, the son of an Israeli terror victim in last week's Berlin attack honors his mother in a touching way. Israel delays plans to build new homes in East Jerusalem. And if you're hungry, stay tuned as I go on a sugar-filled journey to celebrate Hanukkah. I'm Natasha Kirchak, here with the latest news in Israel. Berlin is still deeply mourning the December 19th Islamist terror attack, and last night a very special Hanukkah candle lighting ceremony was held in memory of the victims. The multi-faith service was held outdoors after sundown at the city's most prominent Brandenburg Gate landmark.
Wir stehen hier gerade in diesem Jahr. Heute ist die Kerzenzündung gewidmet an allen Opfern der Terroranschlag. An die 12 Toten und über die 50 Verletzte und ihre Angehörige. Die toten Opfer waren aus Deutschland, Israel, Italien, Czech Republik, Polen und Ukraine. Wir stehen alle heute zusammen.
The Israeli victim was 60-year-old Dalia El-Yakim. She was killed in the attack, and her husband Rami was seriously injured but managed to survive and remains in the hospital. The couple's son, Ol El-Yakim, was invited to light the fourth candle on the city's nearly 33-foot-high menorah, which officials say is the largest in Europe. Those gathered included 1,500 Jewish, Islamic, and Christian religious leaders, diplomats, and citizens.
Dem Hass der Terroristen setzen wir heute im echten Sinn des Wortes Licht entgegen. Das vierte Chanukka-Licht, das wir entzünden, ist wie ein Sieg des Lichts über die Finsternis. Niemals werden wir den Terror unser Lebens bestimmen lassen.
The Tunisian assailant, 24-year-old Anis Amri, deliberately plowed his truck into a Berlin Christmas market. He was shot dead by Italian police this past Friday after a Europe-wide manhunt. In a video released after his death, Amri is seen pledging allegiance to the leader of the Islamic State terror group, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi. I think it's fair to say that the whole of Israel is mourning with the victims of the Berlin attack. Now, moving on to matters here in Israel, controversial plans to build more than 6,000 new homes in Jerusalem were unexpectedly delayed at the last minute today in what's being seen as a move to avoid a further confrontation with Washington. Members of the Jerusalem Building Committee were preparing to issue permits to build 618 housing units in 3 areas of the capital, while advancing plans for another 5,600 residences in 3 other outlying neighborhoods.
It's something that we do, and we do it all the time, and sometimes it's not the right time to do it, but it's done because we have no other option.
Just as the plans were about to go through, the committee was ordered to stop. All the proposed homes are over the 1967 lines, and building in disputed territories has continuously been a contentious issue. Lior Amichai, the head of the anti-settlement group Peace Now, even goes so far as to accuse the Israeli government of sabotaging peace in the first place through new construction.
We can only analyze and say that the government of Israel is doing all what it can in order to destroy the possibility of reaching an agreement with the Palestinians based on the two-state solution.
Contrary to such accusations, the Reuters news agency is citing a member of the Israeli Municipal Committee, saying the instructions to stop came directly from Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu himself as a means of de-escalating tensions with the Obama administration.
We were told by the chairman of the committee that the Prime Minister asked to postpone it, and we have decided to do so.
Mr. Netanyahu knows very well that he has the choice, settlements or peace. He can't have both.
The decision comes just ahead of the speech U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry is expected to make later today about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Relations between Washington and Jerusalem have been severely strained in recent days since the U.S. chose to abstain rather than veto a UN resolution condemning Israeli building in Judea, Samaria, and even parts of Jerusalem. The city municipality released a statement stressing that the UN bill will have no bearing whatsoever on plans to build new homes in Jerusalem for either its Jewish or Arab residents, and that development will proceed in accordance with zoning and building codes without prejudice for the benefit of all residents. Israel's now preparing itself for even more maneuvering at the United Nations against the Jewish state, led by the Obama administration before ending its term in January. This as evidence of Israel's allegations that the White House actually helped to craft and push the UN's anti-settlement resolution forward may have just materialized. An Egyptian paper just published what it's claiming are the actual transcripts of meetings between U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry and senior Palestinian negotiator Saeb Erekat earlier this month. If the documents are authenticated, they confirm Jerusalem's allegations that Washington and Ramallah were conspiring against Jerusalem. Kerry is said to have told Erekat that the White House would definitely back the Palestinians at the Security Council. One Israeli official says that as it appears in the Egyptian press, the protocol tallies with what they already knew, and that this is just a tip of the iceberg of U.S.-Palestinian collusion. Israel is concerned that Kerry will push his vision of a two-state solution in his address later today, as well as at the Paris Peace Conference in January, that Israel has refused to attend. The fear is that such a framework may also be entrenched in yet another resolution the UN Security Council will try to force on the Jewish state. Other explosive allegations found in the transcripts include U.S. diplomats expressing mistrust of the Israeli Prime Minister and Donald Trump, even going so far as to call the president-elect dangerous. The U.S. State Department is denying the veracity of the Egyptian article. There have seemingly been a lot of contradictions in the policy statements of the incoming Trump administration. So what can the Middle East expect? ILTV's Steve Leibowitz sat down with Palestinian affairs expert Gilshon Baskin to find out.
I think that the problem that the Palestinians are facing in dealing with the upcoming Trump administration is similar to the problems that everyone in the world, including in the United States itself, is facing, is that it's completely unpredictable. Trump during the campaign and Trump after the campaign has contradicted himself on almost every issue of importance in policy statements that he's made. Literally 180-degree differences in policies with regard to Israel, saying at first that he will not intervene. This is a problem that the Israelis and the Arabs will have to deal with, and then coming the next day, the very next day, to the AIPAC conference saying the Jerusalem, the eternal capital of Israel, and support settlement building, etc., etc. Today, his advisors, his top appointees, are contradicting themselves on the question of Israel, the question of moving the embassy to Jerusalem. Some of his people have been asked, such as new appointed ambassador, Attorney Friedman, who has said, yes, this will be the first thing that we'll do. And yesterday, another one of his senior policy staff people said, no, he may not do it. He may not do it at all. He may not do it immediately. Certainly when he comes into office, he will still be the ultimate decision maker on foreign policy, but he'll have a lot more whispers in his ear or loud voices telling him what are the consequences of the decisions that he has to make. So I'm not sure that he won't sign the 6-month extension not to move the embassy. I also believe that if he were to move the embassy, the sky won't fall. We've seen more significant steps being done over the years. In 1980, when Israel officially annexed East Jerusalem and imposed Israeli law over East Jerusalem, or in 1981, when Israel did it in the Golan Heights, the sky didn't fall. The world didn't end, the situation didn't blow up. I think the Palestinians are very afraid that this will be a precedent for other countries recognizing Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. And here the fear is not only recognizing West Jerusalem, but all of Jerusalem. And until today, not one government in the world recognizes Jerusalem. Again, not East Jerusalem, United Jerusalem, any part of Jerusalem is not recognized as the capital of Israel, because the international community sees this as an issue that must be resolved between the Israelis and the Palestinians, and not unilaterally determined by either side.
Saeb Erekat has said that he thinks that if they would move the embassy to Jerusalem, without specifying West or East, it would put every American diplomat in the world in danger.
This has been said by other senior American officials, particularly in the CIA and in other security agencies in the United States. One of the reasons that's convinced every president until now over the last more than 20 years to sign the order to postpone the movement of the embassy by 6 months. The fear that American diplomats, particularly in the Arab world, but not only as we see terrorism spread throughout Europe and in other parts of the world, in Africa, that it could endanger the lives of Israeli diplomats, of American diplomats, of other Western diplomats. And this is a cause of concern. Saib Arikat is not giving a prescription, he's giving a prediction of what he thinks will happen. And knowing the state of Islamic terrorism around the world, it should be considered as something possible, as something real.
The Israeli government's bill against Facebook and Google is being advanced that would legally compel the social media giants to remove specific posts based on recommendations from the police cybercrime unit. Members of the Ministerial Committee for Legislation just voted in favor of the so-called Facebook bill that's being proposed by Public Security Minister Gilad Erdan and Justice Minister Ayelet Shaked. They're making it clear that the measure is only intended to be used to force the site to remove posts that incite violence or endanger national security. But the company executives insist they're capable of monitoring content themselves. They also claim they're willing to block content if it violates other countries' local laws. Erdogan complains that so far Facebook has only agreed to remove 23 out of the 74 pages that Israel alleges are guilty of promoting dangerous Palestinian incitement. He also says the company won't cooperate if the targeted material is posted by a user in the West Bank, because Facebook won't recognize a territory as part of Israel. The security minister is also very upset about the time delay in responding to such threats. He says that it can take several hours even if Facebook does agree to take down inflammatory posts, which is just too long for this kind of potentially deadly information to circulate. Israel's Shin security agency is admired all over the world for its triumphs in countering terrorism. It's just been revealed that the Israeli secret agents were able to prevent more than 400 separate attacks this past year. Aaron, tell me about this revelation.
Well, I'll get to some of the details in the article, but it's just the sheer number and scale of the attacks that have been prevented is really incredible, and I think, we should take a minute to appreciate and not take for granted how safe we really are in this country.
This announcement came during a ceremony hosted by Prime Minister Netanyahu at Shin Bet headquarters. The agency was awarded the Prime Minister's Prize for Operational Intelligence for its 6 most complex and advanced missions since 2015. These missions include the development of sophisticated technology for confronting lone wolf attacks, an operation that obtained groundbreaking intelligence information, and the capture of terrorists plotting to carry out major attacks. The premier offered his thanks and said he salutes the men and women of the Shin Bet who serve as the nation's unseen shield. He's also praising the agents for their creativity, boldness, sophistication, and exceptional courage. The agency's director Nadav Argaman attributes its many life-saving successes to quality intelligence, the advanced technology, and excellent human capital, working together to protect and defend Israel from all threats.
It seems like every day an exhibition or gallery opens up in the heart of Tel Aviv. But it's not every day that an artist like our next guest shows her work. Here to discuss her new solo exhibition entitled Penetration, opening on January 5th, is international artist Debbie Ulo. Thanks so much for coming in.
Thank you, Natasha.
So first off, tell us about your solo exhibitions.
Well, this exhibition is really exciting. It's actually my first exhibition. I've been an artist now full-time for 6 years, but this is my first full-body piece of work that I feel really represents who I am and what my art is about. So I'm super excited about it. And it's a series of sculptures, which are portraits of people. They're even called by the people's first names. But rather than creating a portrait of how somebody looks and trying to get to the inner essence of them through their eyes or their emotions or facial expressions, I basically peeled off their skin, if you could say, and gotten to the inner essence. So
what does that mean? How do you get to the inner essence?
Well, because I'm a sculptist, I've taken materials, which is these illuminated cables that I have, which represent the inner essence, and I've combined them with objects that tell stories. Objects that have histories on them. They could be a burnt piece of wood that's been burnt in a fire that has a history behind it, or a piece of metal, forged metal. Different objects that have stories behind them.
And you said, I mean, each of these sculptures has its own name, and
Yes.
I guess that it corresponds to a real living human being, correct? So
Definitely.
how do you incorporate the inner essence of these specific individuals? It's through these items?
It's a combination. I mean, these ropes sort of intertwine and knot, also to portray the inner essence of them, the soul, if you might say, the luminescence of them. And these objects, I sort of work from both ends. I find objects, people give them to me a lot of times. The objects have meaning and history behind them. And I try and match them with the people that have in some way affected me in a strong way. People who I've met throughout my life.
Do they know that you've created these sculptures of them necessarily?
Most of them do. I did ask their permission because I'm using their first name to call each piece. There is a few pieces that are going to be anonymous because they asked.
Those people should probably be scared, or no?
Well, I'll tell you, it's really interesting because it ended up being that these pieces are much more exposing than even a nude portrait would be, because I've taken something that's very personal from the inside and I've brought it out.
Right.
And people feel it. I had one of the sculptures is called Moti, and it's after my father-in-law who passed away. And my husband didn't know at the time that this was what I was doing, creating these sculptures that are portraits. And when he saw the finished portrait of his father, not even knowing it was his father, he was like, I can't have that hanging up in my house right now. It was just too hard for him, and he didn't even know that I was sculpting his father. He's just like, it's beautiful, but I can't have it hanging up.
That's unbelievable. Well, I really want to go check this out. So, much of your work is interactive, and your work at Midburn, which is Israel's Burning Man Festival, for those of us who don't know, is also very special. What makes your work so interactive? Tell us about that.
Well, I studied at University Communications. I wasn't an art major. I studied art afterwards. So communications to me is an important part in my art. It's how does art communicate? Art as a language. We communicate now through English. Other people communicate through music quite often. And art is a form of communication that connects directly to people without bypassing our language. And so interactive art, to me, is having a two-way conversation. Frontal art, the conventional art as we know of, is very much a one-way conversation in a way. So I like two-way conversations.
So what's next for you? What can we expect?
Well, this series is going to be carrying with me for a while because I feel like I've just tapped the surface of it, or penetrated through the surface of it. But I'm also working on, for Midburn, a huge interactive climbing wall with a bunch of, I call them the crazy Russians. We actually built a climbing wall 2 years ago, but this year it's going to be with electrical lights and touch. When you touch then climb the wall, it's going to change colors and have different patterns. That's sort of towards the summer.
All right, well, I can tell you I'm looking forward to seeing this new exhibition of yours, and thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you very much, Natasha.
You can catch the exhibition opening by Debbie Ulo starting January 5th at 8 p.m. at the Omer Tirosh Gallery in Old Yafa. The doors will close on February 3rd, so get there quick. I hope to see you all there. All right, moving on. Gorgeous downtown Holon. You've all heard of it, right? Well, if not, you should know that a national nonprofit organization has been citing this central Israeli city as the most beautiful in the nation for nearly a straight quarter century. The Council for a Beautiful Israel, known as CBI, has just awarded Holon its highest prize of 5 gold beauty stars. The mayor, Moti Sasson, is said to be thrilled with the news that his city just garnered the coveted status for the 23rd consecutive year, which interestingly corresponds with the same number of years he's been in office. And Holon's apparently not just another pretty face either. The metropolis also just won top marks for running the most outstanding local government for the greater Tel Aviv region. Even though the municipality does invest in parks and other green spaces, it's also home to Israel's second largest industrial zone, after Haifa. Some critics suggest the beauty scales might have been tipped just a little in Holon's favor, since the CBI has reportedly been operating out of a city-owned building for some time. According to the local Haaretz newspaper, the environmental group not only isn't paying rent, but also relies on the municipality to pick up its tab for property taxes and other costs, including electricity. City Hall denies any funny business, though, and insists the judges of the municipal beauty pageant live in less attractive cities elsewhere. Have you ever seen someone get emotional over a pastry? Well, that happens to be exactly what I witnessed this week when I hit the bakeries of Tel Aviv to get a taste of what's frying this Hanukkah. Check it out. Donuts, donuts, donuts. When you think about donuts, you probably don't think about Israel. But as surprising as it may sound, the Holy Land is actually one of the epicenters of this fried delicacy, especially during Hanukkah season. Donuts up. Yes, I know what you're thinking. What do donuts have to do with Hanukkah? Well, it turns out a lot. The rationale behind eating sufganiyot on the Jewish Festival of Lights is basically the same for latkes. Oily foods help recall the miracle of the oil during the 2nd century BCE, when a small band of faithful Jews known as the Maccabees reclaimed the Holy Temple and rededicated it to the service of God. When they sought to light the temple's menorah, they could only find a single drop of olive oil that had survived their war against the Syrian Greeks. Yet miraculously, that little drop ended up lasting for 8 days until new oil could be prepared. Until today, Jews around the world continue to celebrate that very miracle by stuffing themselves silly with the oiliest of foods. And believe me, it marks the perfect time of year to visit the Holy Land.
I've been here for about 3 days. I passed these donuts on my first day and I said, oh my God, there was just nothing like this in Toronto.
In fact, every year, over 18 million of the Jewish donuts are consumed in Israel during the Hanukkah week. That averages out to about 3 donuts per citizen. Even the Israeli Defense Forces go crazy for the sugary treats, purchasing more than 50,000 sufganiyot to boost the morale of the soldiers. And there are a lot of flavors to choose from. Between Roladin and Shemo, 2 of the most popular bakeries in Israel, this year alone there are over 29 flavors to choose from. 29! This is a cream-filled chocolate donut. We have the strawberry jam donut. This is the most popular and common donut in Israel. Typically, you can find this basically everywhere. But not all of the flavors are easy to identify. This delight over here would be the Roladin cream mascarpone with some berry flavors. I'm not sure what all the ingredients are in here. The Hebrew is a little bit difficult for me, but it looks good. That's the most important thing. Now, if you're worried about the heavy calorie intake, here's our advice. Just don't think about it. The Israeli health minister has actually made it his mission this year to convince Israelis to eat fewer sufganiyot as part of a larger crackdown on unhealthy food. But not everyone is convinced that he's going down the right path.
Hanukkah's once a year, so eat as much as you want.
This Hanukkah, I think I'll take her advice. I don't think anybody's watching right now, so now's my chance. Here's to a happy and healthy Hanukkah. Tonight, Jews around the world are marking the 5th night of the Jewish holiday of Hanukkah, and as a special surprise, some students from the Kehila Democratic School in Tel Aviv are lighting the menorah for ILTV. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, she'asa nisim le'avotenu ve'leimotenu, bi'yamim hahem b'zman hazeh. Amen.
My name is Gal and I study at Kehila School. I light this candle for all doctors and scientists around the world who are working hard to find a cure for humanity.
And now for our Hebrew word of the day. Do you have trouble keeping things together? Are you constantly losing track of your documents? Sounds like you need our Hebrew word of the day, a shadchan, or stapler. You might be wondering where I'm going with this. Well, a shadchan is much more than just an ordinary stapler. It's an old Hebrew word coming from the root shiduch, or match. Thus, a shadchan is also a matchmaker. Now, while a shadchan can be any person who makes connections, those connections usually have to do with finding you a future spouse. And boy, are there a lot of shadchanim in Israel. So as you navigate your next visit to your grandparents, or just the Holy Land in general, don't be surprised when every person you meet magically transforms into a shadchan or just tries to get involved in your love life. Try not to take it too hard, because soon enough you might never want to see a stapler again. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the weather forecast.
ILTV's weather forecast is sponsored by Adopt a Savta, taking care of Israel's lonely Holocaust survivors.
Tonight will be partly cloudy with a low of 46 or 8 degrees Celsius. Tomorrow is also expected to be partly cloudy with scattered showers and unseasonably cold with a daily high of 60 or 16 degrees Celsius. All right, everybody, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.85 shekels to the American dollar. Remember to sign up for our daily newsletter at iltv.tv. Thanks for watching, and see you tonight.